Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get to today's topic, which is our newest episode of Movie Spotlight, I would like to address rated R riffs and the fact that we did not air on Saturday night. Um, YouTube has gotten rid of the Hangouts on Air function, which made it extremely easy to stream on YouTube. Now you have to go through an encoder, which is currently we're using OBS, but we're trying to work out the kinks because we don't want to do face reveals and stuff like that. So we're working out the kinks right now, and hopefully we'll have everything all set. So maybe we can air next Saturday. I will let people know later in the week. Again, I apologize. I know we've been on a hiatus for now about 6 weeks, but we will be coming back. We're going to be watching Suburban Sasquatch, and I hope everybody that wants to see that comes over and has some fun with us. But now that we have that out of the way, let's get to today's movie spotlight. And today we have a horror slasher classic with 1980s Maniac. Now, this film, if you're not familiar with the horror genre, you probably don't know a lot about Maniac, but Maniac was really, really infamous, especially back in the early 80s, mostly because of Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. Basically giving it a horribly scathing review. I don't know if Ebert went and saw it, but I know Siskel stated that he had actually walked out of the film in the middle of it. And it's a shame. It's one of those things that I know Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel didn't really like horror movies that much. They thought slashers were kind of just the dreck of cinema. They couldn't really appreciate it for what it was, which is really just slasher movies, for lack of a better term, are after a certain point, once you get used to them and you start really enjoying them, they're really just splat stick comedies. They're kind of, even though they're being played very seriously. But Maniac was kind of in its own little bubble. It's actually an extremely good character study of a psychopath. I would actually put it definitely not on par, but in the same kind of vein as a Taxi Driver, except obviously it's involving a serial killer as opposed to somebody who's just a bit deranged, not necessarily a murderer, like a cold-blooded murderer, but somebody who's really got their mind in a dark place. And it stars Joe Spinell. He also worked on the screenplay, and Joe Spinell does a great job in this movie at playing kind of this guy who really lives two lives and has two different sides to him. The side of him that you see in public is he's a little socially awkward. He's kind of charming. He's not really that attractive. He's got a bit of a gut. He's not really that clean shaven. You can tell that he's a little unkept. His hair is kind of frizzy and stuff like that. But he's kind of charming, but he has that social awkwardness that some women kind of find a little bit, not attractive, but an interesting little quirk. And then you have the other side of him that goes out and murders people, and it's very, very interesting to see his character study through this because this is really Joe Spinell makes that character so great, and he does such a good job at just portraying this mentally deranged human being. And even though it is very much a slasher movie, and Tom Savini did the effects for it, by the way, which, it definitely shows. This movie, I think, has one of the best head explosions I've ever seen in a film. Obviously, Scanners has the best. I would put this movie actually probably at number two, and then The Beyond has probably the third one with the little redheaded girl. But Maniac has amazing special effects, again, thanks to Tom Savini. And Tom Savini actually has a bit role in this, where his head gets, blown completely off, which again is very amusing. Now, Joe Spinell, who plays Frank Zito, he's a New Yorker. He has this weird, sick obsession with women, and it becomes even clearer as you go through the film. He has like these mannequins around his house. You can see that he takes locks of hair and stuff from his victims and puts them on the mannequins, or not locks of hair. I believe he actually, if I remember correctly, he scalps them. But the kills in it are really really good. I love the kills. And then even the in between bits, it keeps you very interested in the character. Again, I kind of equate it almost to a Taxi Driver type of thing, where basically it's a character study of somebody who is mentally deranged. Um, and as we go through the movie with him, we kind of there's a point at the end of the film where they do this very interesting thing where they kind of have reality that blurs almost, where it feels like his world. At that point that people are moving in on him. You know that they kind of understand what's going on and they kind of know what he's been doing, but there's a moment where kind of his own reality collapses in on him, and it's symbolic. It's extremely symbolic. And again, it's one of those things that if you actually watch a really good slasher film, obviously some of them are played more for comedy in some cases, but if you watch a really good slasher film, you can actually see character development, especially if they cut down on kind of the fodder characters like this one does, where really it just focuses on Joe Spinell and Carolyn Monroe, who plays his pseudo love interest. And really, after that, it's really just kind of like a smorgasbord of just like throwaway characters. But you don't really need any of them. You just need them to be fodder, because really your sole thing is just focusing on Joe Spinell. And it's very unfortunate that the director William Lustig kind of, I want to say that this movie kind of blacklisted him a bit in certain circles. He did go on to do certain things. He did go on to do Maniac, Cop, all three of those films, which were relatively successful, at least the first two. And he those films also starred Bruce Campbell, by the way. And he kind of got a bad rap for this movie because of Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert's scathing review of it, because they very clearly called it out, and they said that that this is a disgusting film. The fact that this was made is horrible, and yada yada yada. And at the same time, they're praising films. I believe they gave a very good review to John Carpenter's Halloween in 1978. So go figure there. Just because maybe it didn't have as many gore effects and somebody's head didn't explode, um, but it deserves better than that. It deserves to be actually have a serious look taken at it, and I really enjoy this movie. I found this movie probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I came across it, and it took me a little bit to get it on DVD, but I really have enjoyed it over the years. It's one of it's one of those stories that really it doesn't necessarily get old. It's almost like a study of something like a Ted Bundy or something like that. That feels like it's modeled after that in some respects. Even though I think in 1980 that was well before Ted Bundy was caught and convicted, but it feels a lot in that same vein. So if you like that kind of almost like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, if you like that type of stuff where it's really a character study and you get to kind of see this person who's very obviously mentally deranged or sick in the head, and see them kind of go through their day-to-day life and go through this story with them, then you're really going to like Maniac. And also, if you're really into slashers and you like really good kills, you're going to like Maniac. If you don't really like any of that stuff, you're probably not going to like this movie. But again, this is one of my personal favorites. It's a really good slasher film. I think it does everything that it needs to do very well, and I think specifically the Joe Spinell character, or the character Joe Spinell plays, it's really, really, really good. So, you know. That's what I can recommend today. And thank you for listening in on this episode of Movie Spotlight. I hope I have given you a film that maybe you'll go see, or recommend to somebody that you know that likes films like it. So thank you very much for listening. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?